All right, so I had a comment question from a subscriber that said this: would love to see a tutorial of how Podgo presets work with a front of house channel as far as EQ and gain and compression, etc. Is it better to keep everything flat at the front of house console when using Podgo patches? That is a great question. I want to walk through in this video each of those, let you know exactly how they affect your tone, and walk with you through how you can work with front of house to get the best tone possible. Now let me tell you two things up front and then I'll get into the nitty gritty. First is, be kind to the front of house. Your front of house engineers have way more to think about than just your tone, and so you want to be kind with them, build relationships with them. When you walk in, ask them how their day went, especially if it's someone that you see on a regular basis, because you know how we are. We are so obsessed with our tone. We walk in and we're just thinking about our tone way too much, way more than anybody else, and we forget to be human. We forget to treat people like humans. We can come in and just be in our own little worlds. Don't do that. Build bridges, build a relationship with the front of house people so you can be building that trust. Second thing, I always ask my guys to take everything off of my channel at the beginning. That's right, I get there early, I plug in, and I'm like, hey, let's take everything off this channel. I want to hear exactly how this preset sounds. Now, I know my guys, they know I make presets for a living, so I'm always trying new things and testing them out, but you can go about it the same way. You can come, once you've built trust with your front of house engineer, just say, hey, I'm gonna come in a little early and just hear how my presets sound. I would like to take everything off the channel, and then you bring them into this. Say, you help me decide what I need to do to my presets to make them better. Like, what are you having to do to my tone to get it to sit well in a mix? Are you adding EQ and compression and all these things drastically to help my tone? Is this something I can work on and work with them? If you ask and have that kind of dialogue with them, they will love it because they also want you to have good tone because it affects their overall sound. Now know that they're eventually going to do some stuff to your channel because they're trying to take your tone and blend it with everything else. That's not a diss on your tone. That's just how the process works, is they're trying to get all these inputs to sound good together. But if you can make that time where you can walk out and actually hear yourself playing, which is another argument for going wireless. If you've been on this channel, you know I love going wireless. Being wireless allows me to actually walk out into the house, play, and hear what I'm hearing. And if you're able to do that, you might be able to identify quicker some of the problem areas in your tone if you're having some. If you're wanting to go wireless and you've just been thinking about it, I would highly suggest the new XFX wireless guitar system. Not sponsored. Well, it is kind of sponsored. They did send these to me a long time ago, like over 2 years ago, and I just keep getting them because I keep using them because they're amazing. And if you have the funds, only if you have the funds, I would suggest getting both. They make a 2.8 gig and a 2.4 gig and a 5.8 gig. I like having both in case one's not working in a certain venue. Then I have the other one. Redundancy is always a good deal, but they're fairly inexpensive when we're talking about wireless stuff. My Shure, I never know what it's called. The Shure GDLX was like almost 600 bucks. These are 150 each. It's good to just have these as backups, and then if you're wireless, you can walk around and hear your sound. All right, now that we got that out of the way, I want to share with you a few things to look for and listen for to make sure that you sound good in the house. And the first one is make sure they don't have a gate on too much, especially if you're using the one in the Podgo. But a lot of times sound guys will just expect, hey, you're playing with an electric guitar amps are noisy amps need a gate so that sound, that hum and buzz isn't coming through the sound system, and they'll always apply a gate. But if it's too strong, it can totally mess up your tone, especially when you're doing quiet stuff like swells. And us worship guitarists, swells is something we do all the time. If you don't know what a gate is something where you can set a threshold at a certain level, and all sounds that are below that threshold are muted until they rise above the threshold, and then they're introduced. And then when that sound comes back down, as soon as it hits that threshold, it's muted again. So for swells that need to come up and down, if that threshold is set too high, if that gate is too strong, boom, you'll be ruining your tone. Let me show you specifically what I mean. All right, so I have a preset pulled up here called Too Much Gate, just to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I have an amp with one of my IRs here. When we're doing swells, we put on a nice, wonderful reverb. Let's just swell something the key of E. Now what a gate does, at the beginning of your chain, you can put on this gate. So let me throw on some gain here. You hear that sound? Make sure you're wearing headphones or hear it through studio monitors, or make sure it's turned up loud enough. There's a little bit of noise in there. You turn on the gate, completely takes it away. But I'm gonna turn this off for now. And let's act like this is the gate right here. This is a hard gate. Let's act like this is the gate, at the soundboard because it comes after your chain. Look what happens when we try to do swells with the gate set too strong. You hear how it cuts in and out like that? Well, that can happen live. I've heard it before, and you won't really hear it in your in-ears, but it will be that way in the front of house. I've done that several times where I've been able to walk out and do some swells. I'm like, hey, you hear it cutting in and out right there? That's because the gate is set too high. And hey, honestly, you shouldn't need a gate on my channel because I have a gate on my PodGo or whatever device you're using, so you shouldn't need a gate at all. Can you turn it off and let's hear if it's noisy? Usually it's as quiet as this. No noise. Well, let's turn the gate off. Usually it's as quiet as this. No noise, because I'm using the input gate. All right, number 2, kind of like I said in the intro, make sure that they turn all EQ off at the board and then let you know what they need to do to your tone to make it sound better. Is it too muddied and they're having to put some highs in your tone? Or is your sound too piercing and they're having to put a shelf on it or something to get rid of those highs? It would be good for you to know that. So communicate with them and help bring them into the process. Remember, you're building trust with them, so you're friends right now, you're getting along, you're helping each other make good tone. And then right there on the fly, you have a built-in EQ right here. Now, right now I'm using it as a drive, but you can put this at the end of your chain and bring in, introduce, or take out some of the frequencies that this front of house engineer is having to combat and take care of that right there so they don't have to mess with it so much. Also, from week to week, you might be playing different guitars with humbuckers or single coils. Single coils have a tendency to be really high piercing, letting a lot of the high frequencies come through, so you may need to tame those a little bit. Humbuckers, a little bit more gain, usually a little darker, warmer sound, so you might actually, your tone might be coming across dull in the house, and so they're having to add some top into it, so you could do that yourself in the PodGo. Now, real quick, number 3, the same is true for compression. Now, understand that front of house is always going to apply some amount of compression to your channel and all the channels across the mix, because remember, they're trying to get everyone's inputs, all these things to sound good together. That's not a diss on your tone. Remember that. They're just trying to make everything sound good, and compression kind of tightens everything up. And that's why if you're an Expanse Pack member or an Essentials Pack, if you have the Essentials Pack, a lot of these presets already have compression built into them, because we want to make our pick attack the same with whether we're picking lightly or we're digging in. We don't want some spikes in our sound. We kind of want it to be compressed. This is personal opinion, but I have it dialed in the way I like it, whether it's in the Expanse Pack, like I said, or the Essentials Pack. I like the Kinky Comp. I use that a lot. All right, number 4, let's talk about gain staging. But before we do, I want to let you guys know, if you don't know, I recently published my comprehensive course on the PodGo. If you want a step-by-step process to get great tone every single time, check it out. It's a course. I poured myself into this thing. It's got everything you need. It's a resource, so you can go back again and again. You don't have to scour YouTube like right here trying to figure out the answers you want. They're all right there, kind of cataloged, so you can click on it. Nice bite-sized chunk, short video, so you can just learn what you want to learn, go back and try to review something you've learned one time. I do that all the time. I've actually used my course several times since I posted it, just because I need to learn things, because sometimes we learn things, then we forget them. We're like, oh yeah, what do I need to do? The course. In the course, we walk through in depth how to get the tone you want with your specific rig, no matter what it is. We cover a bunch of different rig options, how to master the PodGo edit software, all the global settings, and topics like we're talking about today, where we dive deep into how to create presets at home to sound good live. If you're interested in that, check out the PodGo course. I'll link it down below. Now, gain. We're not talking about gain like overdrive or distortion right here. We're talking about the signal that we're sending to front of house, because sometimes the front of house is like, hey, you're sending me way too much, or hey, I can barely hear you, and that's a big issue with people I hear all the time. So let me give you 3 quick gain tips. First of all, let's start at the beginning, the signal chain. Your signal chain is coming through your guitar first. If you have high output pickups, you can put on the guitar pad. The guitar pad in will just lower your guitar signal a few dB so that you can clean up your signal. It brings less volume in, it cleans it up. If you're struggling getting the clean tone you want, you might want to put the guitar pad on. If you have low output pickups, you might want to take this off to get a little bit more volume coming from your guitar to hit the preset to begin with. And then we move on to the second one. Check all pure volume levels. Now, some levels affect your tone and some don't. Pure volume does not affect the tones if they come after the amp and cab. Any volume adjustments that come before the amp and the cab, or the amp specifically, will change your tone, because it's going to affect the preamp. You're either gonna have more or less volume hitting the preamp section of your amp, and that's either gonna cause it to drive more with more volume or clean up a lot more if you don't have enough volume or lower volume. But things to look for, I'll just show you right here, are channel volume. This channel volume right here is pure volume. It does not affect tone. Master definitely will affect tone. It affects your drive section and all of these, the sag, hum, ripple, bias, and bias crossover right there, or excursion, I think it is. You also have some other levels. Anything after the amp, as long as it says level here, this is just pure volume output. Even on the delay, pure volume output. Reverb, pure volume output, which leads to the third one. I just wanted to mention this. If front of house is saying, hey, I can't hardly hear your signal at all, or you're sending me way too much, back off. Instead of going to all of those, I like to go straight to the output, because you have up to negative 120 or just no volume at all, up to plus 20 dB of volume. That is plenty of volume to get exactly to send the right amount to front of house. So from preset to preset, I like to leave this alone set at 0, so that when I get to play there live, wherever I'm going, I can just use the output block to send them exactly what they need. I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna send you 5 more dB, or in my case, it's usually pretty loud, at least where I play, and I'm like, hey, I can take 20 dB off if you want, and then you can gain stage from there. Just work with them, be kind to them. Remember, don't act frustrated that you're gonna have to do something. Remember, your rig is different than someone else's. You might need 20 dB off, and that's okay. It's not affecting your tone. All right, a few other tips. If they're having to add reverb to your tone from the board, you're not using enough. Add more reverb. There's plenty of reverb in the Pod Go to last days and days and days. If you can't hear your pick attack, you might be using too much reverb. A couple things you can do is bring up the pre-delay to let your pick attack shine through, and then bring down this mix if you don't need as much reverb. If they're saying it's too washy, we can't hear it, there you go. Another one, as far as delay, if you're finding that your repeats are like too clean or they're too prominent, no matter like you want more of them, like you need the mix up to even hear them, but then when you do hear them, they're like too strong or they don't feel right. Experiment with moving this before or after the cab. Let me show you. Let's listen to how it sounds before and after the amp cab. So this is after. Now before. It might sound a little more natural. But again, if you're in a mix and you're like, I can't hear my delay repeats, move it after. Another thing to consider is that anything that comes after a mono block can remain stereo, but anything before a mono block, like your amp and cab, will sum everything to mono. So if you have headphones on, you will notice that this is stereo. If I even move it before my cab, it loses that stereo image. So keep it after if stereo is important to you, but if you already run mono and you want to try placing some of your wet effects before the amp and cab to get more of a natural feel, that's a good way to do it. And another bonus tip, if you ever want to try out a baritone guitar, which this is not one, you can kind of do a faux baritone guitar by using the simple pitch, bring it down -4, make sure that the mix and the shift level is all the way up, which there you go. And now you have a baritone guitar. All right, remember I have some resources for you. First one is a free one. I have a PodGo Tone Secrets PDF. You can click the link below. Get that completely free. It's just pictures, PDF, showing you exactly how to dial in some tones. The second step is go ahead and get the Expanse Pack. It's an ever-growing collection of presets. It's like a subscription, except it's not, because you only pay once and you get free updates for life. check it out. Tons of stuff in there. It's highly a favorite. And then also people have been getting on the course, the PodGo course. If you really want to take your tone seriously, figure out the PodGo, figure out tone in general, get the PodGo course. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye.